Hey everyone, welcome to Porter's Product Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Porter, and today we're talking about how product marketers can effectively work with customer marketing. Our guest today is Andrew Colebrook, Customer Marketing Lead at Google Cloud. Andrew brings us insights from his current position at Google, as well as previous experience at Oracle and Trifacta, which was acquired by Alteryx in 2022. He holds an MBA from Boston University, along with a bachelor's from Assumption University, where he studied math and history. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, Josh, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump right in. Andrew, how do you work with product marketers to align customer marketing initiatives with broader product messaging and ensure that there's a consistent voice across both customer and product channels?
Yeah, get right into it, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's such an important question. I'm glad we started there. But first off, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. That's such a great idea for the podcast, and I'm happy to share my experiences and perspective. But to your question, I do think aligning customer marketing with product messaging is critical, right? And I think doing it in a consistent and authentic way just leads to better storytelling. Two tactics just right off the bat that I can think of that have worked really well for me personally have been building strong relationships across teams and then developing a strong understanding of the product portfolio that you're representing.
Yeah.
And so in my line of work, I'm really focused on the customer narrative, but having really strong relationships and being intentional about building those relationships with the various product marketing teams that we have has led to successful outcomes. And then also really understanding what the products are, what is the messaging that product marketing cares about within each of their product portfolios. That really helps us when we're working with customers and really helps us deliver better value so that we can shape those relationships over time. But those are two strategies and tactics that I think have worked well and, might not be new things for your listeners to hear, but are certainly always top of mind for me as I'm trying to align strategy.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right. They may not necessarily be new, but they're important to understand. And so for our audience, Andrew and I worked together a few years ago, and we're close teammates because our desks were right beside each other. And so we worked very closely on customer marketing initiatives while I was doing product marketing, and he was in his role as well within customer marketing. And so Andrew is a living example of that, being able to kind of sit side by side, understanding customers, getting their pain points, and then helping me get those type of insights so that I could craft messaging. And then we were able to work together on case studies and references that were really powerful. So Andrew really is a good example.
Sometimes it's not as simple as having someone to sit directly next to you in your office, but
yes,
it always helps to have a friendly neighbor, right?
absolutely. Well, now my next question is, what role does customer advocacy and feedback play in shaping product marketing strategies? And how do you collaborate with product marketers to integrate these insights into that messaging?
Yeah, this is key. There's lots of companies that I think are doing this really well, and this is something we're consistently focused on within Google Cloud. My work currently and for the last 5 years has centered around building programs that amplify customer stories at scale. And for success to happen in doing that, customer advocacy is not a nice to have in this process. It's really fundamental to this success.
Yeah.
But the leveraging part of the question and how we leverage and utilize customer advocacy for product marketing, I think really falls into three categories. So the way we frame it is along these lines. So first and foremost, it's around product validation, providing credibility to the products. Customers, prospects, and people that are not familiar with your product really need to hear authentic testimonials in
Yes.
order to build trust and overcome FUD, which is an acronym I like to use, but fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right?
Yes.
To basically go from zero to hero, right? Um, and so that validation is critical. The second part of this really is around identifying and reinforcing product differentiation
Hmm.
to,
Yes.
to really articulate and resonate value. This should be bread and butter. You'd be surprised at how often it gets lost in the weeds, but at its core, is fundamental. So, what benefits truly matter to customers? How does that feedback from the customer get into the hands of product marketing? That is core to, again, these systems and programs I've been focused on building
Yeah.
within a large global technology business. And we really don't see that changing. We've only seen more demand for customer input to help with that, to reinforce product differentiation.
Hmm.
And with how quickly the tech world moves, there's new products that are getting launched, what feels like almost, weekly at this
Yes.
point. And so it's just so critical to have that pulse and have those close alliances. Lastly, I think, and I don't know if I saved the best for last, but just as important is really informing the go-to-market strategy and product teams. So the actual teams that are building these
Yes.
products, as
Yes.
in your roles at product marketer, you're often, working alongside the product engineering team. So how do they build out new features, new functionality? How do we think about launches, right? So taking information about why customers are choosing the specific product, how they're using it, and
Hmm.
really using the language that the customer uses and how they describe the benefits that they're feeling and gaining from the product is critical.
Yeah.
Um, and so, these are all feedback mechanisms we want to create and scale, and just super successful because that's a value delivery that we can bring to the business and more specifically to product marketers because these things are important to them. So
Yeah.
those are the three things I'm focused on, but for hopefully for your audience, those are some things to think about as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked how you structured that. So first, it's all about the product validation, and that's it. So important because product market fit. That's the key with product marketing. And how do you get that validation? It's
Yep.
what's the market? It's the customers. So you, as a customer marketer, are able to bring that to product marketing, which is huge.
Yep.
That's the foundation to it. And
Totally.
your third point was good about being able to help them uh, help bring in that feedback so that you could help the product roadmap evolve. So it's not just about solving the pain points as the customer currently has, but also helping them down the road. Maybe they need something in the future, or maybe they don't quite have what they need at the moment. But that's where that feedback loop comes from, where you as a customer marketer are working closely with customers, you're working with product marketing to give that insight, and then product marketing can give that to product to help with the roadmap. So those are absolutely great steps and a good framework to kind of think about.
Totally. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So now, as we think about product and customer marketing teams working together to create specific customer stories and case studies, what do you think is the best way to effectively showcase the product value and drive engagement using those customer stories?
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a powerful question, very tactical, very realistic for hopefully a lot of your listeners to sort of say, like, how do you actually do this? Right.
Yeah.
Um, one metaphor I always like to give is like, could the Brooklyn Bridge have been built by one or two people? Right? Like, sure, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe it probably would have taken 50 years. Um,
Mhm.
and so I think it just gets the point across about like co-creation and teamwork is critical, right? For any
Yeah.
role, that shouldn't be a surprise. But for these two roles specifically, it's really a superpower. When you're tightly aligned, or and maybe you do not have a customer marketing counterpart, and some of these responsibilities fall, um, into your remit. It's important to be thinking about them and how you
Yes.
can best balance the two needs, because merging these areas of expertise is often difficult, but critical if done well. Because I think they're complementary strengths. So,
Yes.
I would separate them, but some listeners might not. But I think the customer marketing roles in building the Brooklyn Bridge, for example, right, really around identifying these advocates,
Yes.
doing your best at staying close to the customer user base, really having, I call them feedback mechanisms, but listening loops, right, with
Yes.
successful users, to understand the why, understand these insights, documenting these insights, and and really managing the marketing relationship that you have on a day-to-day basis with a lot of these customers. Um, the second part of it is, how does that information get um, uh, transferred and communicated to product marketers?
Yes.
Um, that's where I think just building on some of the earlier questions around relationships and having consistent, meetings and tight alignment, um, helps with the approach. Um, but I think as a customer marketer, really focusing on, again, the upfront of identifying these advocates and understanding the information that they hold and how to best work together with them in collecting the data. Um, and then as a product marketer, really defining, right, they're defining the value. They're
Yes.
they're thinking about product value props, right? Key
Exactly.
differentiators, use cases, and they might even be thinking about target prospects, right? So they probably are also working with a demand gen type
Yep.
of team or function.
Yep.
So that's key. I think the product marketer is also going to be focused on shaping sort of an arc for the narrative, right? So,
Yes.
like, hey, this is a brand new product, but also here's where we're going with it. And how do we articulate what are the values we want to bring to the world with what customers are asking for or what they've told us they need, et cetera. And so that's sort of a balancing act. And I think that's done with some of the product marketers that I work with very well. Lastly, like, market relevance is critical, Josh. Like,
Yes.
just really like thinking about, do we need this? Are there gaps in our storytelling, or are there areas that we're missing, or we're not identifying, or we have blind spots? And so how do we best, align on stories that can either fill these gaps or help deliver a new message to a new audience that we have not worked with before?
Yep.
I know for us, we have teams that are very much focused on persona. So think of people like developers. We also have a lot of teams that are focused on our industry narratives, right? So
Yep. Yep.
thinking about, like, what's the solution that's delivered for the specific industry, and how does that change over time? So those factors really play in. It is really like the magic sauce when it's done right, but it requires a lot more than just one or two people. But I think the 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 theme I'd emphasize is teamwork, right? It's
Yes.
like co-creation of the story itself is not done by one person or even two. It's usually identified, but I do think customer marketing and product have a really strong focal sort of center point to it, and it's been a blessing for me to be part of that in the current position that I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring a good point, because not every product marketer has the scale of large enterprise. Some of them start up, some of them are a scale up. And
Yep.
so some companies will have a customer marketer, and sometimes the product marketer is and a customer marketer are the same. And so it
Yep.
does depend on the size of the business. But in our case, when we were working together, we were fortunate to have that specialization. And as you mentioned too, there's also industry specialist, right? And so that's
Yeah.
something I did in the past.
Yeah, and
And
we haven't
so,
even talked about like, the actual content creation process itself, right? Like, who's taking lead? How do you best incorporate authentic or sort of customer tone or brand voice into that? These things are evolving and changing as technology has evolved, and we've got some
yeah,
really amazing tech that's at our fingertips now to help us do that. But at its core, it's still really about these pillars of product truth, customer truth,
yes.
and validation. So it's critical.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
also too, a couple of nuggets that I, got from what your answer is. One, I like that listening loop. That's a good term. Maybe you can trademark that. But that listening loop of understanding what was the customer pain point and then using that to help
Yep.
inform the story. But then being able to take that story and then share it with their peers, because everybody wants to know, did my buddy company down the street do it as well? And there's particular industries where that's critical, especially regulated industries. If
Yep.
if they don't have a peer doing it, then well, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, even, living in New York City, right? Like, when's the last time you went out to a restaurant without checking reviews
oh,
online or,
exactly.
even just looking at the menu, right? You're dipping your toe in the water, but you're
Yes,
probably not going to go to a new restaurant without a friend or a close colleague telling you, hey, you need to try this place. And specifically their, Cobb salad is amazing.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
the same is true. I mean, these customers are in our world are making, large strategic investments. It's no short decision. It's definitely not impulse buy. So we really need to meet them where they are. And so references are, in customer marketing is critical part of that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you're to that point. The other nugget you talked about was just the validation piece using this customers. It's one thing for company X to talk about their product and brag about it, but it's a completely different thing when somebody else does it for you. It's
Yep.
and you gave a great consumer example. We would more than likely go to a place that our friends have already been to, or the reviews have shown that it's an interesting place to go, as opposed to just randomly throwing a dart and picking a place to eat. So I think that's a great example
It's
of,
always risky to do that in New York.
yeah, it is. You never know what you're gonna get. And I
Yeah.
remember, one, yeah. I remember some of our experiences with that were getting and not only capturing that information, putting it into a case study or blog post, but then it just brought that validation to our prospects, as you mentioned. It's like, great, we've got the existing customers. Now, how do we use that to help ones we're trying to bring in, and using these stories that are
Mhm.
real, that are and relatable, so that they feel more comfortable using our product.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think it's important, at least for your audience, to understand like the way I see it is customer marketing is a spectrum. It's not a binary type of decision that a customer makes to all of a sudden become an advocate or
Yeah.
not. It is a spectrum. We like to use, I guess, the pitch of you wouldn't start off putting a brand new customer on your biggest stage at your biggest event.
Hmm.
Usually there's a bit of a toe in the water approach
Yes.
first, and that sort of speaks to how we think about advocacy, which is it is critical, but it's also critical that we are working with customers to sort of cater to the speed at which they're willing to advocate, but we would never incentivize and or promote an inauthentic voice. I think
Yes.
it's really key for us to um, think about authentic advocacy and authentic customer storytelling because um, people are better than ever in today's day and age at sort of picking up on something that feels fake,
Yes.
something that just doesn't feel quite right or is just not genuine. And you can tell the incentives were not aligned.
Yes.
And so for us, it is an important ingredient to always be thinking about. Um, I view success when I see, customers posting about our products without our knowledge, right?
Yes.
And that's always that's like a huge win. We'd love to see that because no one told them to do it, and no one
Hmm.
really, and it can be risky, but often it's because they've had such a great experience, and it's something that you know Google and Google Cloud I think does pretty well.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and so with all that, the next question is, of course, what are the ways to measure the success of kind of these joint customer and product marketing efforts? And how do you optimize that collaboration for better outcomes?
Yeah. I think that's a big question, certainly. And I think there's lots of teams that help us do this, but I think at its core, we want to be measuring a few key things to help inform our day-to-day decisions as well as sort of the long-term roadmap of
Yeah.
how we're working together. So things like customer acquisition and growth, I think, while not directly in our control, I do think there's some levels of influence. It's a bit more of a soft metric that we'd like to see,
Yes.
but we have, at least in my world, we have teams that are very much focused on this and are OKR'd by this.
Hmm.
It's definitely not a metric that should be forgotten, because at the end of the day, if you're working in a business that is trying to remain profitable or become profitable, this is one of the North Stars, right?
Yes.
It's great to tell stories, and it's amazing to put out outstanding creative into the world that wows people. But if it's not leading to real business results, it sort of it can be viewed as not strategic. So that is important. Second is and this is just a luxury that we have as well. We have a lot of free products. We have a
Yes.
lot of products that people can test, that they can GA. And so making sure we at least have a pulse on product adoption and engagement is critical. Like uh, knowing, not necessarily our day-to-day usage statistics, but at least having a pulse on trends over time, I think
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
critical. And trying to do our best to tie that back to content and how we are delivering content and how that's led to things like trial adoptions or free signups and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Really, really critical. This is where I said one of the key tactics is having friends across the aisle. And so for what that could mean here is really, we have big teams within our demand gen organization, and they're tasked with rolling out campaigns and making sure these campaigns are successful. But one of the key elements of that is, how is it leading to product adoption and engagement, and how is our customer storytelling landing. So those two sort of soft metrics, while we don't ultimately control the outcomes of them, I do think there's a high level of influence that product marketers and customer marketing teams have in those, and should definitely be listening to them at the
Yeah.
very least, so that they're not, getting lost in the forest, right, and not seeing the trees.
Yeah.
Um, Lastly, like some marketers, this isn't necessarily in my world, but just some marketers could care about things like customer life cycle. Uh,
Okay.
we within the technology space and the platform that I'm a part of and represent, it's sort of an always on type of thing. But I know a lot of people in software are thinking about like retention or churn rate, and
Hmm.
um, how customers might sign small time bound sort of contracts and things like that.
Yeah.
And so those types of things are critical. Um, but I think the most important metric that we're always thinking about is probably familiar with this audience, was more along the lines of like a net promoter score, NPS,
Yes.
CSAT type of like acronym. But basically, it's like, how happy are your customers, which is it can be sometimes hard to measure because happiness is subjective. It also it
And-
very quickly can change, right? So it's
yes.
like, do we do this on a Tuesday or do we do it on Mondays when we're working or
Yes.
still dragging from the weekend?
Uh-huh.
Um, but I do think being super scientific about how you're collecting that. We have a customer intelligence team. We have some data scientists. We have some people that have some really strong stats skills to help us run surveys and again get a pulse on this because it's not necessarily your only North Star. But for me in customer marketing, like this is critical. And we've been doing a really good job of late, just really meeting customers where they are. So really getting out at events, making sure we're collecting these, types of data points after webinars, and trying to get a pulse from our user base and our customer base, so that this type of hard data can be coded into some of those strategies we talked about earlier. But these things should be on every product marketer's radar and definitely not forgotten about.
Yeah, that's great. So ultimately, so the recap, it's about customer acquisition. It's about understanding uh, the the net promoter score,
Yeah.
or essentially, like you said, it's like it's really, depending on the day, that can be subjective.
Yep.
But that's important. Also, I think I'd like to add to something that you and I worked on, and this is a program that you led, without getting into much detail, where we did instead of just a case study, we did a kind of a peer reference call, but it wasn't just one peer to one peer; it was one to few. So one particular customer was telling about 7 other customers their experience, and they did a Q&A, and
Yep.
it was a creative way to do customer references, and it ended up creating a significant amount of pipeline.
Yeah.
And I know you ended up scaling that throughout the organization. And so that's definitely another metric too, that marketing influence pipeline that came directly from a customer reference.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, our customers have lots of different ways that they provide value. Content is certainly one of them.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of content. I think that once the content is built, the marginal cost for it is zero, really. So ROI is unlimited because it's always going to be there unless something changes. Um, but customers, especially happy customers, can also deliver a ton of value for organizations. The program you mentioned, we're always looking for areas to scale. We know that reference discussions happen, and for your audience, the way we would define that is a prospect wants to talk to a customer in a private setting.
Mm-hmm.
And an easy way for us to scale that was how do we stand up environments where these conversations can happen,
Yeah.
and then how do we facilitate them so that the conversations are not only on topic but also potentially beneficial for both parties as well as Google.
Yeah.
So a lot of our customers really, and myself included, care about networking. You're always trying to build new bridges. And one easy way that you can do that is connecting your advocates to your growing set of customer base. And yeah, that was a great example of some of the work you and I did together. And it's certainly a great way to support your counterparts in sales because they'll always need this.
Yes.
And they think, and they'll tell you it's the only thing they need in order to close the next big deal that they're working on. But it's just one of the many ingredients that I think leads to successful outcomes. And so, yeah, just facilitating those types of meetings, whether they're private, digital, setting, or in person at events and things like that. It's a really strong tactic that teams can use and should use.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And brought great results. So kudos to you for that.
Kudos
So
to you.
All right, Andrew, really good insights. Your experience in kind of aligning strategies, leveraging customer advocacy, co-creating compelling stories, and then ultimately measuring success of all that, I think is really inspiring for a lot of product marketers and customer marketers out there. So really appreciate the
Thank
wisdom
you.
that you
You're gonna
can
make
impart.
me blush. I mean, that's
All right. Well, now before we wrap up, we need to have our quick rapid fire round to get to know
oh
you a little
gosh.
better.
Yeah.
So, are you ready for this?
I guess I'll be as ready as I'll ever be. So hit me with it. What do you got?
All right. First question: favorite marketing tool?
Oh gosh. There's so many. Right now, and I think we're recording this. It's April 2025, so it's definitely got to be our our first party AI tools right
Yes.
now. To Gemini
Yeah.
being I guess the leading candidate. It is a superpower. There's so much potential, and
Yes.
I think we're just starting. We're in the first inning of what could be the most important ball game of our lives, but it's pretty incredible, and yeah, definitely my favorite right now.
That maybe a little biased, but not unfounded. So, yes, very
Yes, definitely some bias. I'll make sure everyone's aware,
good.
right? But I think we've got some pretty cool technology. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. No question about it. All right. Second question is, what do you think the most underrated skill in product marketing is in your experience?
most underrated skill in product marketing, huh? That's a good one. Yeah, underrated. I Yeah, I always tend to think about the best product marketers that I've worked with on what is it that they do really well. Um, it's got to be something along the lines of like, hey, they're able to take really complex ideas
Uh huh.
and either new or very technically heavy products and really break them down into simple and easy to understand terms.
Yes.
So maybe that's a communication skill
Yeah.
to some
Absolutely.
degree.
Absolutely.
I guess it's a soft skill for sure, but
Yes.
people that are able to do that are just not only a dime a dozen, but we need them all to be in every single leadership position possible because it just makes things so much easier for folks when you can break, like I said, like complex tasks and complex ideas down into really digestible formats. I always appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's one thing to explain something scientific to another scientific person, but
Yeah.
when you're trying to explain something scientific to someone who's not scientific,
Yes.
then that's a skill. You have to be able to
Totally a
translate.
skill. Yeah, especially if you work, the culture I think in my current environment is still pretty engineering heavy, and I guess the world does not um, work in engineering terms.
Hmm.
So,
Yes.
product marketers are able to really take um, that world and that culture and be an excellent conduit of it to the rest of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So underrated for sure.
All right. Next question. What do you think the biggest mistake is to avoid in product marketing?
Gosh, there can't be many, right? I don't know if this just applies to product marketing, but I'd say just for even my own um, world is really trying to just overdo it, uh,
Hmm.
trying to boil the ocean,
Yeah.
trying to do too much at one time. So there's lots of teams, there's lots of strength, hopefully around you and other folks that you can lead into and delegate and sort of collaborate with because it takes a village, right? The Brooklyn Bridge was not
Yes.
built in one day by one person. So, yeah, that's a mistake. I've seen a lot of people just try to do too much, and it doesn't ever really lead to successful outcomes. So,
Yeah. That is solid advice, not just for product marketing, but yeah, try to overdoing it. You have to prioritize.
Yeah, do one or two things really, really well.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
All right. Next question is, what's one thing you wish you knew when you started?
gosh, I feel so early in my marketing journey, but just even in my own career. So I still feel like I'm starting out. But God, it's a great question. I'm gonna probably go with another soft skill that I wish I
Yeah.
had maybe leaned into more and um, put a bit more emphasis on how to get better at it earlier on in my career, which was really like building internal influence
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
diplomacy, if that's
Sure.
the right word here. But really, those two skills, right? Like, I wish I had known first and foremost that they were skills that were
Yeah.
needed in a global organization, but then also like how important they are over time because nothing happens in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And, you could be as charming and good looking as Josh Porter, but
Stop it. Stop it. Some
you do
more.
need to be able to influence, and doing that a diplomatic way. It often can you you can try to create allies, and in the process, be creating enemies.
Yeah.
And you'd think everyone that works in the same company is trying, their best to promote you as an individual, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Everyone has their own remit and swim
Mm-hmm.
lanes and charters and products, even, right? And how do those things compete with one another?
Yeah.
It's often a diplomatic sort of race, and so people that are very skilled at doing it, I think, have longer term durability and success. And yeah, for people that are just getting started, like, think about those things really um, deeply because if you can master them, right, you can do a lot. And don't underestimate how much you can accomplish with some good sales skills internally.
Yeah. Yeah. The influence is huge. And
Yep,
because you're not working in a vacuum, to your point. You got to be able to have alignment with the other stakeholders you're working with. So that
totally.
influence is important.
Yep.
All right. Last question.
Oh, good. Last one. Here we go.
Favorite podcast?
Can I say yours?
You can absolutely say mine because you don't have to. Yeah, I will take it.
Um, I'll give you a couple that are top of mind. I mean, I love anything that's put out by NPR.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I do a lot of running, and so I love listening to podcasts while I run. But yeah, anything from NPR, like Hidden Brain,
Yes. Love it.
listen to it every week.
Yes.
Long format, I also love, like, that. It's called The Knowledge Project by Shane Parrish.
Okay.
So he'll interview business leaders, thought leaders, and it's a 2 or 3 hour long
Ooh.
episode often. And they talk about, complex topics, often, business related, but sometimes not. But yeah,
Okay.
I love that type of stuff. And, I've gone through waves too of, I guess, the murder mystery podcast,
Yes.
but I'll keep that to myself.
Oh, that's great.
Guilty
Those are
pleasure.
good.
Yeah.
Those are good. Yeah, I love Hidden Brain. Very good about learning about psychology. And I hadn't heard of the other one you mentioned, so I'll have to check that out. That sounds awesome.
Definitely do. Yeah, it's great.
All right, Andrew, great answers. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise on customer marketing.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks, Josh.
You bet. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Porter's Product Marketing Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. We'll be back soon with more insights on how to help you excel in your product marketing journey. And until next time, keep innovating and keep driving impact.